Day 1371 of the Ukrainian war map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 1,167,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,120 in the past day. Then as for hardware, 2 tanks, 4 APVs, 18 artillery, 2 air defense systems, and another oil refinery. So headed to the map, as an overnight drone swarm of over 150 aerial and sea-based unmanned vehicles has struck Russian positions from Rostov to Crimea to the Black Sea coast, and where several strategic and fuel-related assets were hit. Starting off, Russia's air defense systems were recorded engaging the inbound aerial wave from multiple directions, which displayed like firecrackers popping off as Russia leaned heavily on small caliber fire to protect the Novorossiysk port from attack, and a port that, by dawn, saw visible damage at both an oil terminal, the Sheskairis oil terminal, and even a Project 171 Tapir-class landing ship moored nearby. Farther down the coast, flashes were also observed at the Tuapse oil refinery, where Ukrainian forces again struck this infrastructure overnight as defenses opened up seaward. Then also seen coming out of this latest intense overnight raid at the Russian Black Sea coast region of Gelendzhik, where a malfunctioning missile from a Russian Pantsir S-1 short-range air defense system reportedly struck the upper floors of a residential building while attempting to intercept an incoming unmanned drone. Not much more is expected out of those Pantsirs. Operationally, this inbound swarm event, and recent others just like it, forces the Russian military to divert air defense assets toward rear area coastal LiDAR, drones, and seaborne threats, reducing coverage at other key sectors, with those air defenses already showing signs of exhaustion and gaps emerging across other fronts. And speaking of those other fronts, overnight, a Ukrainian aerial strike targeted the Taganrog airfield and adjoining Beriv aviation complex and repair plant in Rostov. Also confirmed with footage and satellite fire detection data, multiple fires erupted around the hangars of the A-60 military test plane and at a maintenance facility that upgrades Tu-95 long-range strike aircraft. Reports indicate that the A-60 is very likely to have been destroyed or rendered inoperative, and where photos go a long way to confirm the concerns for this aircraft. Now, only 2 such prototypes were ever built of these A-60 planes, which were designed as airborne laser air defense test beds, intended to use nose-mounted directed energy systems, lasers, capable of disabling or destroying incoming missiles and drones. The 2 test jets were built for this purpose in the early 1980s and 90s, built 10 years apart, and now leading to at least 1 test plane likely seeing an early retirement, just like most of its A-50 cousins. Then into the main map, into Pokrovsk, with the currently unfolding engagements that show exactly why it's taken well over a year for Russian forces to complete their Pokrovsk objective, as on the latest occasions, separate Ukrainian assault groups were seen entering and engaging into the western part of the city, but also where soldiers of the 425th Skala Regiment that were seen moving near the church in downtown Pokrovsk, all as the Ukrainian army continues to deny Russia an uncontested foothold in the Donetsk western axis. And so, on a specifically related topic to Pokrovsk, regarding these ongoing series of highly attritional attacks deployed by Russian forces, we come across more Russian accounts of Russia's manpower fulfillment tactics, including recruitment under coercion from a penal colony, where one Russian man's account has described catastrophic losses within his unit, claiming that 97% of the men sent with him into recent assaults were either wounded or KIA, and he said that replacements arrive constantly, only to die shortly after deployment. The soldier, who identifies himself as Ramzan, said he was serving time in a penal colony where he was violently forced to sign a military contract by a camp boss, and living under the threat of daily harm. Upon reaching Ukraine, Ramzan said he was thrown into brutal assaults in this central Donetsk region. During his first mission, 140 men went forward, only 4 survived. On the 2nd, his platoon of 20 men lost 16, mirroring devastation across the unit. He suffered severe leg wounds but remained at the front for 25 days without evacuation or medical care. But despite the staggering casualties listed here, Ramzan said new prisoners continue arriving at the front lines, stating, quote, "They keep replenishing, end quote. From gulag to grave. But the question remains, will Russia be able to seize the entire Donetsk region in the near future? Some have argued that if Ukraine does not concede the Donetsk region now, Russia will capture it soon anyway. But on closer examination, it shows that the situation is far more complex. Over the past 19 months, a timeframe marked by the onset of Russia's most intense offensive push in Donetsk, Russia seized about 1% of Ukrainian territory and needs another 5,000 square kilometers to take Donetsk alone. By mid-December 2024, Russian forces were positioned 6 to 7 kilometers from Pokrovsk. It then took them 11 months and almost all of 2025 to break into and occupy the town, or not completely occupy it yet. So capturing the remainder of Donetsk in a short time frame is increasingly unrealistic, especially as the Ukrainian military has shifted extensively to drone wall tactics, dramatically raising Russian losses and slowing assaults. As a result, replicating the past 19 months of advances would require Russia to absorb similarly staggering casualties, well over 500,000 troops, and lose tens of thousands of pieces of equipment. And that's if they have that heavy armor genuinely to spare. As such, the full capture of the Donetsk Oblast remains an extremely difficult objective for Moscow, potentially requiring many months, or even years. Russia understands this, which is why it is attempting to pressure the US and Ukraine into concessions that would deliver the territory without armed engagements. So, in short, Ukraine can either hand over the remaining 5,000 square kilometers of Donetsk to Russia now, or they can continue to severely attrit the Russian army, regardless of whether Moscow ultimately fails or succeeds. Because in the event that Russia takes the entirety of Donetsk, there is very little to suggest it would stop right there. Then further on the map, very briefly, to the northern region, with reports of an AFU advance around Stepova, which is within the wider Kupiansk direction, some 18 kilometers or 11 miles southeast of the town itself. Then to head further south on the map, with Russian sources on the south bank of the Dnipro in Kherson that are warning that Ukrainian forces have gained fire control over key supply routes near Oleshki and the Kinburn Spit. Persistent drone and artillery strikes have made Russian resupply across the region progressively more difficult. In fact, the Russian 40th Army Corps practically looks deactivated in this area. Their 47th Motorized Rifle Division looks like it was never formed. The 70th Division now answers to the 18th Army Corps. So only the 144th Brigade is still assigned to the 40th on paper. In other words, it's a bit of a mess. You could even bet that much of the 144th has been disbanded or handed over to another army to the east. Then to take a look around the map, the AFU's Madar's Birds unit continues their effective strikes against Russian armored vehicles on the eastern front. This time, they destroyed or disabled at least 11 pieces of military equipment, including a BTR-82 APV, a BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicle, and including one now very rarely seen or operated MTLB armored personnel vehicle, once considered the workhorse of the Russian army, which is now, most of the time, nowhere to be found. Also on the map, an example of a Ukrainian mobile air defense group that shoots down a Russian Shahed kamikaze drone with an M2 Browning MG. Now to the far southwest, as Russian drones violated the airspace of both Moldova and NATO member Romania earlier this morning. Moldova's defense ministry confirmed several drones crossed from Ukraine's Odessa region overnight, with one crashing into the Moldovan village of Kureshti Dios. Police evacuated residents, and investigators are inspecting wreckage. As for Romania, the Defense Ministry stated that radar detected at least 2 incursions near Tolshia and Galatz counties. 2 German Eurofighters and 2 Romanian F-16s were scrambled in response. They likely waited for these drones to return back to Odessa airspace, though no impacts on Romanian territory were reported. Nonetheless, the incidents again tested NATO's air defense posture along its southern flank, where repeated incursions incursions risk tightening engagement rules and diverting fighter coverage. Now to the news, where following the diplomatic volley in Geneva, the event may have brought Ukraine and the United States closer to a revised peace framework for the war with Russia after initial shock over a previously proposed 28-point peace plan from Russia, which they described as coming from the US. In Geneva, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and a Ukrainian delegation led by presidential advisor Andrei Yermak agreed that the earlier peace draft, viewed by Kyiv and European partners as overly favorable to Moscow, would be significantly altered. Officials said the revised version now contains fewer than the original 28 items, reportedly trimmed down to approximately 19 points. Key Ukrainian red lines have been reinforced. Kyiv insists it will not accept any limitation on its armed forces, refuses any recognition of territorial losses, and demands the freedom to pursue EU and NATO membership without external vetoes. In its joint statement with the US, Ukraine reaffirmed it will not be an obstacle to peace, but will also not surrender sovereignty. From Moscow's side, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Russia had received the revised peace proposal through unofficial channels and was ready to discuss its wording, noting, quote, a number of issues that need to be clarified, end quote, likely referring to all of Russia's maximalist demands missing that could only be found in the original peace proposal. Then to head across to a Ukrainian hardware news update, as Ukraine defense firm Firepoint, maker of the Flamingo, has confirmed progress on its new ballistic systems, the FP7, range about 200 kilometers, and the FP9, range about 850 kilometers, with first deliveries of the FP7 planned by late 2025 this year. The FP7 will be codified shortly this year as well, followed by the FP9. Now, the FP7 carries a 150 kilogram warhead and reaches speeds of 1,500 meters per second, or roughly Mach 4. Mark 4.5. The program underscores Ukraine's bid for independent and formidable long-range strike capacity. The FP7 is designed to cover frontline and coastal targets, while the FP9 would enable deep strike missions hundreds of kilometers behind Russian lines, and to great effect. After all, these are ballistic missiles. Together, they represent Ukraine's second major missile reveal this year, following the Flamingo, signaling rapid maturation of its domestic precision weapons industry. Then to head across to a Russian state media TV segment, as a couple of days ago, Russian propagandists could hardly contain their excitement in their understanding that Putin won the lottery in getting the West to even consider Russia's insane 28-point peace plan. They branded it as Trump's peace plan, amounting to Ukrainian capitulation. But fast forward to now, and it seems they were a bit too quick to celebrate, and will surely, in the upcoming short-term future, return to their typical day's ghastly rhetoric. That's our Russian state media TV. Then to a super quick funny to round out the video today, as a captured Russian POW, clearly enjoying Ukrainian hospitality, wasn't exactly hiding his feelings about the Kremlin's Tsar. He called the Russian leader every name under the sun, the sort of words Putin himself wouldn't find very endearing. And the best part, at least for the Ukrainian soldiers behind the camera, was their laughter and joking over just how swift and successful this little re-education of the occupier turned out to be. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe. Thanks once again for all of the support. I really do appreciate it, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!